Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. So we're actually going to be driving an LMP2 car in the IMSA Hagerty iRacing Series. So something a little bit different. First time I've done one of these in basically 12 months. I think I've done one of these races before, maybe two, around Road America a long time ago, back when I was probably sub 1800, 1500 I rating. So jumping into one today, pretty low strength of field, only about 2300 overall, and I think it was less than that in the LMP2 series. As you can see, it's a 45-minute race around the famous Laguna Seca. Pretty warm on track. I think it was about 25, 26 degrees or something like that. Might have been slightly cooler. And it was a really interesting race and something I haven't really done for quite a while. A few things going my way, a few mistakes of my own. But it was a very different style of driving to the Skippy, obviously, and something I'm not really used to and something I want to get a little bit better at. So I thought it'd be cool to put up my first race. Overall, was going pretty well, and I guess you'll see how things end up. So if we have a quick look at the grid, the grid is Cisco Morales on my left there, and he actually forgot to put enough fuel in. I still had his qualifying set on to start the race, so he had to make an extra pit stop early, which was beneficial for us. For myself, who managed to put it on pole, was pole until the last 2 or 3 seconds of qualifying, where Cisco quite significantly beat our time, and he was the fastest guy on track for sure. David Griffin, Pierre-Marie Leclerc, Check Yin Lam, and Daniel Grenoble were your top sort of 6 in the LMP2s, and then you have Kevin Cordoba, Ryan Bell, Kevin Peters, Sean Collins, Elliot Miyashiro, and John Jennings, which sort of showed the class of the GT3 cars. And there was a few cars that didn't set qualifying times down the back here. So you can see there about 5 LMP2s that didn't actually set any qualifying times. So it was an interesting race. And I reckon now is as good a time to get into it as any. So we're going to start from here, coming into the second to last turn behind the safety car, starting from P2. Let's see how we go. So just looking to get a good start. By this time, I had already heard on the radio that Morales was going to have to pit early.
I'm gonna stay all the way to the right, so pass me on.
Let's just get rid of that. Apologies. And we're underway. So Morales got a really good start. Much quicker than me from the early outset. Now we get a little bit of a dive bomb here from our friend in the Red Bull car on the left, going full Max Verstappen. So we managed to run wide there intentionally, and he goes off right away. Had to slow right up there to keep ourselves from banging straight into the back of the Max Verstappen mobile. Into turn 1, I just let him go through. You could see him come from a mile away, and this was all about learning, practicing passing traffic, and seeing if we can have a good race. I wasn't too worried about fighting for position on lap 1. Now it's quite a long race, so there will be parts in this where we won't do too much talking, but I will try and go through sort of what my thinking was. So early on it was all about just trying to build on any lead that I could from the car behind me, knowing that Morales was going to have to make an extra pit stop to me. It wasn't about pushing to try and catch up of that lost time from the spinner. It was all about being safe and not taking too many risks. So 1 lap down, we're still in second. We're already 4.5 seconds back from Morales, but that's okay. And we're starting to build a little gap on Lamb, which is a positive start to the race. Really tricky to get this corkscrew right. You can hear there locking up the tyres a little bit. Really easy to do. And you'll notice that that's a bit of a constant theme throughout this one. Getting the corkscrew not quite right. I noticed earlier, I think the tyres being cold and a full tank of fuel, I was probably pushing a little bit too hard, and you can hear those just slight micro lockups here and there, which definitely are not helping the speed. Already got a nice buffer back to third place though now, which is nice. Ooh, bit of a micro oversteer there. And that was what we were trying to do, build a nice gap so that when we get up to this GT3 traffic eventually, we'd be able to hopefully push through it pretty easily. Speaking of lap traffic, let's put the track map up there, just so you can see how far we've got to go until we get up until we start to catch that lap traffic. So you can see the pit lane for Morales on lap 3. You can't go much further with that qualifying set, so he's going to be right back in the pack now. And we actually take over the lead, which is something I wasn't expecting when jumping into this session, that's for sure. So now my mindset's really changed. You know, I came into this worrying about I rating and thinking about just trying to do your best, stay out of trouble, don't fight for too many positions, hopefully wait for people to make mistake when they start to pass through traffic, to now noticing that the pace isn't too bad, and we're actually a chance of maybe winning if we don't make any mistakes with the fastest guy on track, Morales, having to make an extra pit stop. And, you know, we're always a chance when that happens, so... So we're dipping our times into the 13s now, so we're starting to get a little bit quicker. First corner, one of those corners that's really easy to get wrong, either braking too deep or trying to get onto the throttle mid-corner or trying to get onto the throttle too early and running wide, so really important to get that one right. Obviously we've got the kink coming up now. Fabulous corner, really tricky though. Easy to get wrong. And not a lot of runoff on this track. And completely surrounded by gravel and the sand. You can hear those tyres still locking up a little bit. So pushing towards the 3-second barrier now on our friend Jensen behind. Hoping that we can keep starting to stretch this out so that when we get up to traffic, we've got a little bit of leeway and we can try and pick the best way through. So you see we're starting to catch up to the GT3 traffic now. We've got about 3 and a bit seconds back to Jensen behind us. We're about a couple of corners back from the GT traffic, so in the next lap or two we'll be starting to make our way through the pack for the first time. This isn't something I'm very experienced with. In fact, very rarely have done it, especially not in a car that's significantly faster. You know, every now and then in Skippy driving, you come through some back markers or some people that have had some crashes, but you don't have the, you know, 6 second, 8 second pace advantage on them. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes for me. So I'm starting to see the traffic ahead of me now, starting to catch the glimpses of the back of the GT3 cars, and I'm starting to think to myself and just remind myself, be patient, pick your spots, no need to try and send it down the inside and cost yourself, you know, positions and safety rating and all that kind of thing. Be all about trying to pass on straights where possible and, you know, out braking when we need to into those big braking zones. Definitely starting to get nervous thinking, am I going to catch these guys right at the corkscrew for the first time? And that looks like it's where we're going to catch them. And you can see a little lock up there. So try to nip down the inside of this car here. Unfortunately, he's trying to take the same space as me. So not the best start. And you can see that already Jensen behind has gained a second and a bit on us just from that one, you know, false move trying to get the job done with the lap traffic there. So this will be a little bit easier. Get a few cars on the straight, which is lovely. This guy changes his mind. Thought he was going to go wide originally. Goes down the inside. Had to go really wide here because he was taking up the inside line. You can see there, but that's okay. We'll get him on the exit. But you can see already Jensen's now within a second of us, so we've lost 2.5 seconds basically just in that time trying to pass through that traffic, and depending on where you catch cars can make a big difference to how easy it is to overtake them and can make a big difference to your lap times. So there is a little bit of luck in a sense sometimes with this kind of racing, but you also make your own luck by being patient. You can see here almost getting cut across the top of by the GT3 car, but all's well that ends well. But a big lock up that's going to cost the tyres a little bit of wear, and definitely isn't ideal for the next few turns especially. So like I said, my first real time coming through traffic, and so far so good. And we have had a bit of a lock up. We have had a couple of, you know, semi moments, just not quite knowing where's the best place to overtake, but so far so good. So it took us less than 10 minutes to catch the lap traffic. And there'll be many more overtakes needing to be done throughout the rest of the race, that's for sure. Laguna Seca, surprisingly, you know, pretty fun track to drive this car around and to race this car around. Lots of spots where you can overtake and get the moves done. You just got to be patient. You can see there the last lap time, basically 4 seconds off my best lap time, which just goes to show how much lap traffic can cost you if you run into it at the wrong spot. And Jensen is right on our tail now. So it was really nice to get that move done there, just ahead of Renson. Gave us a little bit of time, although he got him pretty quickly on the straight. So a little bit of clean air after we make this next GT3 move, and that's a chance for us to hopefully try and put some daylight between us and Jensen behind. We've got the gap back out to 1.5 seconds, and we want to try and build that as much as we can. So I got about half a track of clear air now, as long as people don't start making pit stops. So this is the time where I really wanted to try and focus, put in some good laps, and try and build that gap so that if we do run into any traffic again in the next time we catch the majority of the field, that we can keep maintaining that gap in between myself and Jensen. And as I thought, there was a bit of mistake there on the intro board. It did say the strength of field was about 2300. I thought it was a bit low. It was the complete strength of field for the whole field was 1996, and like I said, a little bit lower than that for the LMP2 class, which I think was about 1720. So a little bit lower than we first thought, but nonetheless, an interesting race still. Coming up to our first bit of LMP2 traffic up here, and the next lap's going to be my fastest lap, so I'm going to do a quick talk through of what I'm aiming to do through each corner. Alright, so obviously trying to open up this as much as we can, maximize the exit speed onto this nice long straight. Coming up into the double left-hander, braking just after where the concrete starts, trying to get in nice and tight, rolling off the throttle and the brake, and just trying to roll through. I had to give a little dab of throttle there, up to third and then quickly down to second on the brake, and then rolling through, trying to get on the accelerator as early as possible for there. Slight dab of the brake, stay in third, turn in and get on the gas as quick as you can, try and maximize that exit speed. Braking about the 250 here, down to second, in nice and tight, carrying as much speed through, and again early on the throttle, which is a theme around here. Little short downshift, a little bit of brake and turn in through the kink, get in as close as you can early on the throttle. Up to the corkscrew, the most difficult part, trying to brake, hold it over to the right, try not to lock up, getting in nice and tight and trying to cut as much of that as you can. Just up to third, a little bit off the gas, cutting in nice and low, and then down to third for the right-hander, running myself wide, and then braking just before the 200 mark, down to first, and trying to open up that turn, get on the gas as early as possible. You can run a little bit wider there, and then using that to get all the way up and do your best lap of the race, which is a 13.07, which is better than any of the time trial laps I did whilst trying to do some practice around here before I had the confidence to jump in and do a race. I definitely think I could have got into the 12s this race. I left a few tenths in this first sector. I was always 2 or 3 tenths up, but I never really get another clean lap for the rest of the race. Always running into either some traffic or starting to make mistakes myself. So, sort of a third of the way through the race, just over, and we've started to build that gap back up to 3 seconds to Jensen behind us. Morales, of the Cisco variety, is back up into 3rd spot after his early pit stop. About 24 seconds back from us. He still needs to make another pit stop, so we've got a nice buffer there, but we will start to see that slowly diminish as the race goes on. He's certainly the fastest driver out here and had really good pace. Now this is a really awkward one, trying to decide, do I go before the kink? I decide to hit the curve there and really unsettle the car. You know, in hindsight, do I maybe leave that and I end up having a really big lock up there into the corkscrew. As I was saying, you know, do I maybe just hold off, try and get the run up the straight? You know, I was still trying to carry that time through and try and keep that buffer away from Jensen. In hindsight, it cost me probably 1.5 seconds. Would I have lost 1.5 seconds if I wasn't as aggressive? Probably not. So it's kind of food for thought for me when I do any more of these races in the future. Is, you know, is it worth being a little bit safer and maybe dropping 1/10 or, you know, 3 tenths or 4 tenths, whereas, you know, taking those risks could cost me a lot more time and are obviously more risky, more chance of damage, more chance of an incident as well. So something for me to think about in the upcoming races. It's just a very different style. I'm still trying to feel my way through, I suppose, how to drive these cars the best and what's the best way to work your way through traffic. Definitely on the brakes a lot earlier that time. Really worried about locking up into the corkscrew now. It's definitely something that started playing on my mind throughout this race. You can see on the track map now, the cars are a lot more spread out than they were the first couple of times we started catching lap traffic. Which makes it a lot easier. When you can pick off one car here, one car there, it's a lot simpler than when you're trying to pick off 3-4 car bunches all at once. See, this is all about timing. I don't try and send it. I know that I can get him nice and easy the next one. So we just lift out, take that first second right-hander, first right-hander a little bit more cautiously, and just cruise around on the straight section. I must admit, overall, the GT3 traffic in this race was really great. I didn't really have too many issues. No real problems. Morales now 18.5 seconds behind, starting to catch us. See, we're doing 14 threes, 14 twos, Jensen and myself, and we will have a look next time Morales crosses the line. I believe he starts dipping himself into the 12-second marks as the race goes on. There you go, best lap of the race, a 1:12.4. So he's certainly got the pace, and he's certainly starting to put some dents into that time that he gave us by doing the extra pit stop. We managed to build that time back to Jensen again, up to that 3.5, 3.6 second mark. I was really happy with the way I was able to keep building that time up once we got away from traffic. It seemed to be a common theme for the first sort of 2/3 of this race, where I was able to really make that progress when we're in clean air. Didn't have as much success when we were coming through traffic. I think I maybe need to learn how to negotiate that a little bit better. Overall, I don't think I did a bad job, but definitely something I could probably work on. Over halfway now, and I'm starting to think about when we're going to need to pit for fuel. Is a compulsory stop? Well, I guess it's technically not compulsory, but you need it to get home on fuel in this IMSA series. Another start lock up into the corkscrew. Really gave me trouble this race. So you can see on the dash there that we've probably got about 7 laps of fuel left. Maybe 6 if we can't save any over the next few laps. So starting to think about fuel. There's still 15 laps left in the race. So it'll just be a short splash. Won't be putting in a whole heap of fuel, but enough to slightly change the balance of the car. And it's something I noticed right away after the pit stop, that the last few laps on this tank, when the car was super light, it was just enough to change the balance up, and I started to have some trouble. Maybe it was more of a placebo, if I'm honest. The car probably was not even that different at all. But between the tyre wear and the nerves that I started to show, it felt like I was driving something completely different. See there, a little bit wide and having to get on the brakes a lot more than I'd like to through the kink. And you see now the Red Bull car that we actually had our incident with earlier in the race pulls into the pits. Well, not incident, he spun ahead of us and we had to basically slow down. But you can see now Morales back to 13 seconds, under 14 seconds to the lead, putting in some real quick times. Taking the kink at about 180 kilometers there, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Can check the dashboard on for the last little bit of this race. Probably should have had it on earlier, but you can see it there on the steering wheel anyway. Might actually leave it off, seeing as the steering wheel's there, and you can kind of see all the gearing and the speed anyway. It's about 4 laps left of fuel now, just under 5 laps. And you see we make a little bit of a mistake there. Running a little bit wide into the final turn. Really starting to push. I was starting to see that time come back between Morales and myself, and now Jensen's starting to gain a little bit of that time as well. And you know, rather than that mindset which I started the race of as I'm just here for practice, you know, try and get as little damage to the I rating as possible, build up some I rating, but most of all learn a little bit more about this multi-class racing format. All of a sudden I've spent most of the race in first place, and now all of a sudden I want to win. You know, it's that little racer in us that we just can't seem to get rid of sometimes. And you know, you go into a race with the right intentions and thinking about, I'm not going to care about this, I'm not going to care about that, I'm only going to try and focus on this. But get yourself out in front of a race and all of a sudden the mindset changes completely. Take a little bit too much of that sausage curve there and get the car a little bit unsettled.
To go. That's 10 minutes left.
So you can see there, Jensen goes into the pits. Now, straight away I'm starting to think, okay, I need to maximize this in-lap as best I possibly can. I decided to stay out. I noticed that there was a bit of space ahead of me, not too much traffic, so I thought I'm going to stay out and do my last 2 laps on fuel and really try and maximize them if I can. Need to be nice and patient there as we pass the BMW. And I think this is where I went wrong. You know, even though I was really patient there, I started to think I need to maximize, and I start trying to take as much time out of Jensen whilst he's in the pits as possible. And you can see we have a big lock up there. The car doesn't want to turn. We end up off the track in the corkscrew. We get a little bit of a slowdown that was served just by getting back on the track because I locked it up so slowly. But now, you know, all that hard work, I'm thinking, oh gosh, I've pretty much lost that time to Jensen now. In hindsight, I think I should have come in that lap. You know, a chance for me to mentally have a bit of a cool off. You know, I'm frustrated that I made such a silly mistake. You know, there's always a risk now that I make another mistake trying to make that time up that we just lost. I think I wasn't too bad. I was pretty cool under pressure for this lap considering. I didn't make too many mistakes, but it definitely could have been a better in-lap. But I just don't think it was a risk I needed to take. I know I had clean air, but, you know, after making that lock-up and costing myself basically 3 or 4 seconds, it just wasn't a risk I needed to take. Another big lock-up, costing me more time. So at this point, I know that I really need to have a good pit stop if I'm any chance of staying in this race. So you can see 33 seconds as we dive into pit lane for Jensen. Get that pit limiter on nice and early. Don't hit the wall like we did in practice. And you can see Jensen coming through the corkscrew now as I trundle my way down pit lane. Pretty short lap here, so it doesn't take much to catch up while someone's going through the pits. Don't get the best of stops. We start filling up with fuel. And I know I need to nail this pit exit if I'm any chance of staying with Jensen. Let's see how we go.
The exit's clear. Don't cross the white line.
You see Jensen now, he's coming down the straight. We just need to make sure we get this right. Oh no, the car doesn't want to turn and we're in the dirt. And there goes Jensen, the Alpine machine. I mean, I think it would have been tight even if I got it right, but it definitely would have been a lot tighter than it is now. You know, 2 seconds up towards Jensen now, and worst of all, less than 6 seconds with the speedy Morales Cisco behind us. So the last 3 laps definitely haven't been our best, and it might be the difference between winning our first LMP2 IMSA race ever and maybe 3rd place. Now I had to refocus my mind a little bit here because I was a bit annoyed that I wasn't out in front, but this is where I started to say to myself, you know, 3rd place is fine. It's only a little bit loss of I rating. You were here to just get the experience. You know, don't try and overdrive the car trying to catch up to Jensen. You know, there's a good chance that Cisco's going to catch. So let's just make sure we don't turn this into a race where, you know, I have an incident, have a crash, or something, you know, untoward happens. See the braking power there of the LMP2. And a little bit of an oversteer there. Bit of a slide coming out of turn 2. Actually, they might even call it turn 3 here, I'm not sure.
Alright, Braden, 5 minutes to go, 5 minutes left.
We actually made a little bit of time back to Jensen, so it's down to 1.2 seconds now. So I'm starting to feel like there's a chance that we could still win this race. Cisco's still 5 seconds back. Got about 8 laps left in the race. Now we're within a second, so lap traffic starting to help me catch up, and decent speed also. I guess I needed to remember that I was getting away from Jensen when we were in fresh air, so there's no reason why I can't be doing it again by catching up, as long as we don't make silly mistakes like that. Very kind of the BMW to get out of the way there. I was trying to be nice and patient. So 1 second to the car ahead, but only 3.5 seconds back to Cisco now as he makes his charge. up towards the front after having to serve an extra pit stop, giving us literally a whole head start. Another big lockup. A big lock up there from Jensen. Gives us our first real sniff of the lead again since we pitted. But needing to be mindful that we've got a speedy Cisco Morales right behind, catching at a rate of knots. So I'm definitely not looking to make this move anywhere where it's going to cost us more time than it needs to. And there you see a mistake there costs us 6-7 tenths of a second.
That's 2 minutes left. 2 minutes.
Started to feel like the car was getting away from me a little bit in this part of the race. Starting to overdrive it for how it felt. I was starting to make a few mistakes here and there. Felt like it didn't quite have the turn in it once had at the start of the race as the tyres began to wear. And probably as the temperature of the track heated up a little bit as well. It's a really tricky spot to be here with 3 GT3 cars. And that's put Morales right on my tail, less than half a second. And it looks like P2 is all but over. Oh, big crunch there, and the LMP2 ahead has a crash, and we let Cisco through. And we almost lost Jensen there. So here I thought it's going to be a fight for second and third, but Jensen runs wide, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on there because it seemed like he let us both through. And I thought maybe he had some significant damage from the little bump on the right-hand side with the GT3 car coming out of the second to last turn. But eventually he got on the radio and said that he had to start saving fuel because he hadn't put enough fuel in. So it meant after all of that and worrying about possibly only getting third, that it's looking like we're going to get second anyway. Morales has now pretty much run away with this. He had the speed. He was well quicker than me, and I needed to not make any mistakes in that period of the race with the outlaps, the pit stop, and the in-laps before that, because all that time I lost in that section, that 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, you know, from the lock-up into the corkscrew, from the pit exit, has basically cost me the win in this race, because I think we go on and we grab second, but I think it's by about 4 or 5 seconds. So, you know, we don't have those little silly errors, and who knows, we could have been staring down the barrel of our first IMSA win. So we ride out these last few laps of the race. Jensen slowly fades off into the distance as he tries to fuel save. Morales slowly fades off into the distance as he's just a much quicker driver than me. And we kind of settle into a nice rhythm to finish off this race with not too much stress. I say not too much stress, but I did forget about that big lock up into the corkscrew. As I said earlier, it's definitely been a bit of a theme for this race, and if I was to do another race here this week, it's something I would definitely have to work on, the braking area into the corkscrew, because that did wreak a little bit of havoc for me in this race. Very polite GT3 car there, braking very early for the corkscrew. Still locking up into the corkscrew. Definitely an area of focus for me if I race here again. So we come into the approach for the final lap. You know, not too much traffic to deal with on this lap, judging by the track map. So a little bit of GT3 traffic here. Oh no, that was the final lap. My apologies. So there you have it. The race is over as we put the results up. Overall, you know, pretty happy with the way things went. It definitely could have gone worse. And it definitely could have gone better. I think, as you see there, just those few little mistakes really cost us the chance at a victory. So overall, a really fun time and something I'm going to try my best to do a little bit more of. I don't know how I would go so much if the split was a much higher strength of field. I think that was around about my level, although it seemed like I came second quite comfortably. You know, I had a few people there that were at my level, and definitely I think some cars that maybe had some problems at the end of the race. Sorry, that was the qualifying results there. Maybe some of those people that had some problems at the start of the race that might have been able to give me a bit of a run for my money. But overall, coming away 3.5 seconds off Cisco despite his extra pit stop, and 8 seconds ahead of Jensen in the end is a pretty good result for me. So I'm pretty happy with that. Thank you for watching. Make sure you drop a comment if you want to see more IMSA racing, and subscribe if you're new, and feel free to catch my live streams over at twitch.tv/the1dwade. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.